I've got some urgent news to tell you. Here's what I've got to share. It has been a wild 24 hours weather-wise across Minnesota. In Tracy, there's severe storm damage this morning. As you can see by this map, Tracy is located in the southwestern part of the state between Marshall and Worthington. About 100 residents are homeless this morning after high winds
whether it's the killer, whether it's the person who he has talked to, somebody knows something. And we hope that with the 25th anniversary coming up in June, somebody comes forward.
Welcome to What's Next, everyone. My guest today is Caroline Lowe. She's well known in the Twin Cities area as a beloved reporter for WCCO television. But her work, her new What's Next, is helping her with personal self-assignments. So thank you so much for joining me today, Caroline. I really appreciate it.
It's great to connect with you again, Diana.
Let's start with the first thing. You're a grandmother, so that's priority number one. So on Mondays and Tuesdays, you're helping take care of your baby, your grandbaby.
A toddler now, she's 14 months. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay. That's when you have to clear off everything on top of the tables to make sure
Cover everything.
Yeah.
But it's probably the best job I've ever had, but it's fun. It's very rewarding.
Okay. So then in your other time, so Wednesday on, it's the Jodi Huisentruit disappearance. And that case, it's kind of hard to believe. It's 25 years now that she disappeared. And so let's start there. So what can all of us do to help make this a solved case?
I think it takes a lot of different things. The main thing, particularly in the Mason City area, Iowa, in the Midwest area, we believe somebody knows something. Somebody has held on to information all these years, whether it's the killer, whether it's the person who he has talked to, somebody knows something. And we hope that with the 25th anniversary coming up in June, somebody comes forward. Now, if you don't know something, if you're not connected, there are a number of things you can do. One is to follow our investigation on findjodi.com. We have flyers. We have various ways you can keep Jodi in the spotlight, keep her case from fading.
So you learned a few lessons from the Jacob Wetterling case. So how did you apply them then to this case? You had already gone from WCCO television. You were out working at San Luis Obispo, but KARE-TV brought you back in to work on that. So tell our viewers how did you happen to come back, and what was the break that then helped with Jacob Wetterling?
I decided to come back because KARE 11 news director Jane Helmke reached out to me. She knew how much Jacob's case meant to me. Jacob and Jodi have been two of the biggest cases I've ever covered, two of the biggest sense of unfinished business that I felt when I moved to California in 2011. So what I think I learned from Jacob, in the end, the person who took Jacob was right in his own backyard. Lots of national coverage, just as we've seen recently and over the years with Jodi, but in the end, the information was right in Jacob's backyard. And that's one of the key things we look at, looking for where Jodi is. We put up some billboards on what would have been her 50th birthday in 2018. And the message is, someone knows something. Is it you? And those billboards, one of them is still up on North Federal. And we hope that if someone goes down that avenue, they're forced to think, should I come forward? Or could it be the person involved? But again, we learned from Jacob's case that was right there. The other thing we learned is for years, the focus was on a neighbor, a person of interest. I was there in 2010 when the police dug up the man's backyard. Dan Rassier dug up his yard down the road from Jacob's. Clearly, everything seemed to be, in their mind, pointing toward that person. In the end, he was totally innocent. He had no connection whatsoever to what happened to Jacob. And that stays in my mind, along with some other cases where you can get locked in for years being convinced it's somebody. You don't have enough evidence, but authorities point to that. And even in Jodi's case, there for years, from day one, the investigation has focused on a person who is close to Jodi. And more than 90% of the time, it turns out when a case happens, a person is murdered, it is someone connected. But Jacob's case tells me, never give up, keep the door open. I hope by keeping it publicized, that maybe somebody who thinks it's unsolved or thinks it's solved will still come forward. So the two biggest lessons are, it could be right there in the backyard, the importance of keeping the case in the Midwest beyond all the national attention, and don't get locked in to just one person. Until I see the evidence, I think it can be none of the people whose names we've heard.
Now, you're working with a group of people on findjodi.com. So tell me a little bit about their background and how all of you came together to basically start findjodi.com.
We all came in different ways. The findjodi.com was founded in 2003 by two Minnesotans, news people, Josh Benson and Gary Peterson. They were in Austin on KARE-TV. Josh was an anchor. Gary was the news director. They had done a number of stories called the Huisentruit files. And like so many of us who covered Jodi's case and others like Jacob, there's a sense of you want to continue beyond the story of the day or whatever's going on. So they founded this nonprofit, pretty much did it alone for a number of years. And then in 2011, after I moved to California, Josh reached out to me, asking if I'd be interested in joining. Others have joined over the years. We have a retired Woodbury police officer, Jay Alberio, Josh's wife, who is a producer. She's on the team as well. And then recently, a Minnesotan, a local radio guy who's had a podcast on Jodi, Scott Fuller, joined our team. We are spread out across the country. We have lots of challenges trying to be in 3 different time zones. Josh and his wife, Tara, are both in Florida. Jay is in Minnesota. I'm in California. But what pulls us together is we've all come to the Jodi case in different ways. And we feel this commitment to use our skills. We're doing all of this on our own time. This is not our paid day jobs anymore. This is something that we do because we feel Jodi was one of us. She's part of our news family, if you will. And we feel we have the skills and experience to keep at it. We know how to keep public awareness out there, and we know how to dig. And we hope in some way that by continuing to do what we do, that we will bring Jodi home. And our message is, somebody knows something. Is it you? And it's time to bring Jodi home.
Now, you're also starting a podcast.
Correct. One of the reasons that we are very excited to have Scott Fuller, who's a terrific digger, join our team, is to help us create this podcast, which we hope to launch before the 25th anniversary in June. A lot of podcasts have popped up over in recent years, including Jodi, and we want it to be more the podcast of record. One of my biggest frustrations is so many things are out there with incorrect information, even national shows that have incorrect information. We want it to be the podcast of record. It's basically a podcast, a different platform of what we're already doing. We have posts that we do on findjodi.com. We have social media. This is another way to take our message to keep Jodi out there in more perhaps of a conversational tone, more of a reporter notes tone. We can explore things. We'll do a number of topics, mostly trying to keep the record accurate. It's very frustrating to see the amount of inaccurate information out there because our concern is inaccurate information could reduce the chances of finding Jodi.
So when people, where can people come and listen to the podcast?
I would direct everyone to findjodi.com. All of our links are there. We also have a Facebook page, which we have a lot of people very engaged there. We're on Twitter, and we'll point everybody in the direction. And as I said, it'll be the next couple months. We'll be putting out releases. You can also get a monthly bulletin we put out, but findjodi.com. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to remember.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things, and we both agree that we prefer something called either unretired or at least, the third chapter, perhaps. But people who ask me, and I'm sure you get the same thing, how did you go from years of being an investigative reporter, then being into and taking the test for being a licensed private investigator?
It was definitely new for me. After I was looking at getting off the full-time day-to-day track when I was in San Luis Obispo, I wanted to continue to use my investigative skills to work on unsolved cases. In fact, I have many of the photos of victims' cases I covered in Minnesota right behind me on my desk here in California. I thought, what can I do to take it to another level? And I looked into whether I could get my license here in California. And when I first looked into it, I saw that there were some former investigative journalists who were licensed. I applied. I had to document more than 6,000 hours of investigative experience at my experience at WCCO. I submitted 3 times as much just to be safe. And because you have to have 6,000 hours. And my application was rejected. And I was pretty shocked because I know there are a number of investigators, licensed investigators who've gotten through. Well, apparently in the past, they kind of let them in. There was kind of a backdoor way, and many of these people are very good investigators, but they were admitted even though they didn't technically fit what's required under the law. So one of my mentors is an amazing woman named Francie Keeler, who is, I think she's 74 now, just got her master's degree, working on her PhD, talk about what next. And she was determined to get the law changed to make sure people who had similar backgrounds could get in. And she went to bat and she got the law changed. It passed unanimously. The governor signed it a few years ago. And I was the first investigative journalist under the new law to take the state test. And it was tough. You know, I hadn't been in school in a number of years. And to sit down, I didn't tell anybody I was taking it other than my husband, just in case I didn't pass the first time. It was very difficult, but I passed. And most people who take the test now, and there are several other journalists I know who have done that, they go on and become private investigators. I mostly wanted the license to have access to better databases, to attend national conferences, local state conferences with other investigators. They're mostly retired police officers. Pick into their brains. Anybody I meet, I give them a Jodi card, I give them a Jodi flyer, and I say, what do you think? What would you do? And I use these tools to network and to do a better job. I don't have any intention of actually opening, at this point, a PI business. I just want to use the tools and what it gives you to get your license. Before I took the test in California, Minnesota allowed me to get licensed. They didn't require an exam, but they reviewed my experience and I went through their process. And I told them at the time I was wanting the license so I could work on Jodi and Jacob to get more experience. And not long after I got my license, Jacob was found. I was called back to work on Jacob. So I feel like it's all part of the path. And I have this feeling, the way things worked out with Jacob, that things are gonna get solved with Jodi. That gave me so much hope that things can finally be solved with Jodi.
And also in our conversation that we had before we did this interview, you said at this particular case, Jodi's case for you is personal. So explain that for me.
I get emotional when I talk to you about that, or people, because I look at Jodi's picture on my wall and I keep thinking, what should I be doing? What am I missing? What could I be doing? And I go through things over and over again that I've looked at before. I talk to Jodi's sister frequently, and I got to know her mom before she deceased a few years ago, and I promised her mom I'd stay on it, and her mom died without knowing where Jodi is. I feel they said she's part of our family. My daughter at one point worked that same daybreak shift that Jodi was working as an anchor in Mason City. My daughter was working that as a producer in KSBY right out of college. There wasn't a day that she went into work that I didn't still have in the back of my mind that something could happen on the way to her car. She was also short and blonde. And even though she was not on the air, I had that same fear. It is personal. And I do feel sometimes that I haven't done all I could, that maybe if I had done more interviews, maybe I'd done a little more this and that, we would have been able to contribute sooner. So I keep at it.
Thank you for continuing what you're doing and your group on Find Jodi. So let's give people an idea of where they can go. If they're curious a little bit more about what you're doing, please head to Find Jodi with an I, findjodi.com.
Thank you.